you plan and prepare for your...
But with this kind of weather, it wouldn't be too bad out there, Jay.
No, we're just a couple degrees below average today in Sioux Falls, so very autumn-like weather. Not Western South Dakota, a totally different story. Look at Rapid City right now. They have blue skies they've had all day long and 80 degrees. It's interesting that the 80 degrees comes with, they even have a north wind, and usually that's a cooling wind this time of year, but not so today because of the abundant sunshine. This is what it looked like in downtown Sioux Falls during the day today. A thin band of clouds, but right over the Sioux Falls area now. Out to the west, you do see some.
One of those low probability, high impact things that could happen. So with this experiment, we're looking at NASA potentially being able to protect our planet from asteroids of the future.
And we're watching here as the spacecraft DART approaches Dimorphos. You can see it getting closer and closer. We're here just in the final few seconds. 14,000 miles an hour is what you're watching. The camera that we're watching is traveling 14,000 miles an hour on DART, the spacecraft, the refrigerator-sized spacecraft that's going to slam into Dimorphos here. We're just literally a few seconds away. So I understand, Kristen, as it gets closer, we're just going to see it get closer and closer, and then literally, I kind of hear a lot of talking behind you. We're going to just see an explosion, then it go to black.
It's amazing, guys. Oh my God. That's right, Aaron. It's going to happen.
Inspire sleep apnea.
What did I do? And for the first time,
and we have impact, a giant leap for humanity in the name of planetary defense.
Woo! Fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Oh.
What a moment. Very few words can really capture.
If we drop the lower thirds there in the graphics, you can see everybody cheering. We have impact. Congratulations, NASA, you hit your target. All right, this is the DART test, and clearly it worked. It's proof of concept.
Policy making.
Disabilities.
Or governor in some of these governor states with their insurrectionists, so that's where we're at right now. But
Pretty amazing to see it. I mean, this sounds like the room. Obviously, celebration in that room. I mean, talk about threading a needle, Kristen. I mean, you just said, you're talking about that they just sent from Earth an object the size of a refrigerator into an object the size of the Great Pyramid in the middle of space at 14,000 miles an hour, and they hit it.
It's unbelievable. So now, Aaron, the next big challenge, NASA has completed its first big objective. They've proven that they can do this. They've proven that they can take this spacecraft and slam it into an asteroid. Now the big question is, were they able to successfully move this asteroid off its current orbit? They're not trying to move it by a lot. This asteroid is not going to blow into a million pieces like you saw in Armageddon. All they're trying to do, Aaron, is move it just slightly off its orbit so that if this were to happen in the future, where there were an asteroid that was potentially going to wipe out all of life as we know it on planet Earth, could they do this far enough in advance and knock this potentially killer asteroid off orbit and save the planet? I mean, that's truly the technology that they are testing here. And so it's going to take a few weeks before we know if they've successfully completed that objective. They do.
A great purpose, planetary defense come together, and you know, it makes a magical moment like this.
Yeah,
really.
Absolutely. And you can see so many people there that have made this happen. The team of APL engineers that have really poured their souls into this mission.
Lori, any last...
Antonin Scalia and resident On Balance scholar. Ian, I don't know if you
come from. And Hunter was trying to drain gas out of Louisiana to send to the Chinese. The media says this deal fell through.
Also with known heart disease, and you may lose weight.
Come in various sizes. They can pose various types of threats to the planet. And by doing this test, what NASA has been able to do is they've been able to show, as we've seen just tonight, they've been able to show that they can actually do something that potentially can alter the track, as Kristen was mentioning, the orbit of these asteroids. And if they can do that, if they get the angles right, if they get everything in to make it work, that could potentially save life as we know it.
Yeah. And good for them to have a victory after all these delays that have been happening on Artemis. All right, thank you both very much.
The comfort is the fact that You
must become a true master. Water.
Cooler next week with temperatures in the 70s for the most part. That's your forecast. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Keep up with all the current news on
just zooming in like that, and you know, it really is just such the team accomplishment, and to get to this moment over so many years. And I don't have to talk about it as coming anymore. It's happened now. We have done this.
It's happened, and it is just incredible that as humans, like, we have done this. We did this. And Nancy, do you have anything you'd like to say to the teams who made tonight possible?
Oh, I mean, I don't need to say anything to the teams because I know everybody like me is really proud to be part of this, right? Proud of this thing that we've been working on for years, you know, and even before 2015, internationally, people wanted to do this. People wanted to take this first test. And then we finally did. Partners across the United States. We have actually 28 countries represented on our investigation team of scientists, telescopes on all 7 continents, everybody doing their part to make this moment happen. I know I'm really honored to be on this team, and I know other people on the team feel the same way.
As you should, Nancy, and I mean, there's a lot to celebrate here tonight. And so now that we have confirmed impact, can you let us know what's next for this mission?
Well, I mean, I think I'm still taking a moment here,
sorry.
This is a big deal, and this was a really hard technology demonstration to hit a small asteroid we've never seen before and do it in such spectacular fashion. But I know other scientists on the team, like me, are already pointing at those images, being like, "Did you see that boulder? Did you see that smooth area? Did you see the shape? What does that mean?" And Lychee Cube is like flying by right about now. They're close approach, like taking images, and they're storing them, and we'll get those in the next days. Telescopes here and in space are looking. They're looking at the brightening of the rock that's thrown off from that spectacular collision that we saw, and this is going to go on for weeks. And so there's still a lot of excitement to come, but nothing to take away from this moment.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. It looks like everybody is celebrating here in Mission Operations. I think I just saw Bill Nye there. And so it is a huge day for this team, but also for humanity. You know, Nancy, you mentioned earlier about some of the international collaborations. And could you give us an idea on kind of the scope of DART's mission, right? It's not just us in the United States that's focusing on this. So can you expand a little on that?
Yeah, I mean, planetary defense is really an international issue. We are all on this planet together, right? I mean, and I think it's been so great for this mission to really support and embrace that international cooperation for planetary defense so that we can maximize what we learn. And this idea came about from international scientists talking to each other, working together, you know, in order to make this moment happen for NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, building the spacecraft here at APL. But really, scientists around the world are ready to study the, what did we do to Dimorphos? But more importantly, what does that mean for potentially applying this in the future? I mean, DART really is just the start. It's just the first planetary defense test mission. It was spectacular, and it's accomplished, and we'll figure out how effective it was. That's really what we're going to learn in the next weeks to come. All right, we hit this asteroid. Now, how effective was that at deflecting it, and what would that mean for using it?
Yeah, there's still so much to unpackage here. And so we have a special guest who is wondering, you know, more of what's next for this big mission. So let's hear from her now.
Hey everyone, I'm Danny Hansen, American Paralympic rower and hydro athlete. And first, I would like to congratulate the entire DART team on crossing the finish line. So congratulations. And with that, here's my question. Now that DART has impacted, how will you know if the spacecraft has actually changed the asteroid's orbit?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a double asteroid system. So all we've done here actually is change slightly how Dimorphos goes around Didymos, right? And the telescopes on the Earth have studied this for years. So we knew it used to be 11 hours and 55 minutes. What is it going to be now? And so the telescopes are going to measure that period change. And they're so good at this. They've done it for decades already to get us to that point. And they're going to work for the next weeks and make that measurement. And when we have it, we're going to be sure to share it with everybody to see how much we did deflect this asteroid with the DART collision.
Wow. Well,
Previous dose of flu vaccine. Don't get flu block quadrivalent if you've had a severe All right, Kerry, thanks. Up next, from fife and drum to hip-hop and rap, the new sound of the U.S. Army.
News Now brings you reliability in an unpredictable world. Alexandra and Eric start your morning with the latest stories, and First Alert meteorologist Aaron Doudna will help you plan and prepare for your busy day. Dakota News Now, every weekday from 5 to 7.
It's terrific. Eczema with Rinvoq. Rinvoq is not a steroid, topical.
Feeling all its own.
Attention.
5-week trial, draw from 800 statements by those charged and summarize tens of thousands of messages, hundreds of hours of video footage, and hundreds of phone calls, location and financial records. According to the original proceedings, 3 Oath Keepers members have pleaded guilty to the seditious conspiracy charge and are among more than a dozen potential informants in the case. What do you expect? What would you anticipate the defense might be? Because it seems pretty clear what the plan was.
You know, I think it's very much going to be, these were just words. We were just acting tough. You know, we really didn't mean it. And a certain amount of some of the tactics we saw with the prosecutions against the Bundys and some of these other things that are going on. And watch what Trump's been doing and what he's going to be doing legally, because I think we're going to see some parroting there as well.
Do you, knowing these people, knowing Elmer Rhodes, how serious do you think they were about overthrowing the government?
I think they were absolutely serious. I think if things had gone just a little bit differently, we would be living in a different reality right now. You know, if you look at his words and his messaging that he was putting out just the night before at the speeches, with what has been released with the prosecution, the messaging that was happening, specifically like on Signal and behind the scenes, I think that's really where we see where his state of mind was. And, you know, if things had just gone, if Trump had walked down to the Capitol building, I think Stewart's actions would have been completely different.
And do you get the sense that what he was doing, and keeping in mind for our audience that you were not involved at the time, but just from knowing this person, what's the likelihood in your view that he would have done this without some sort of connection to someone like a Mark Meadows, to the White House, that he was doing this freelance completely without any knowledge of the Trump team?
Oh, no, I think they had lines of communication open with the Trump team going back to the campaign. I think that they were actively trying to open those lines, both from the militia side and from the White House side, from the campaign side. I think that they probably connected up a while back. So I think without that type of connection, you know, he may have showed up as like a protest, but nothing like he was there, because it seemed like he was getting messaging, like he was taking orders from Trump.
Let me play, I don't know if we still have it. This is asking my director downtown, Sterling Brown. Do we still have this video from the CNN video? Do we have that? Can we play it again? We don't have, okay, well, we won't play it for now. We know that there is video now that is going to be played by the January 6th committee, and it shows Roger Stone, before the election even happened, saying, F the voting, let's get to the violence. That was the attitude before the election even happened. In your view, was that the same attitude that Stewart Rhodes had?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he was talking about how we don't get out of this without a civil war. I mean, this is the messaging he's been, you know, putting out there time and time again since, you know, the early days. It's gotten more and more extreme and more violent. You know, before he was talking about what would be termed a cold civil war. But really, I mean, he's talking about a hot civil war now, and that's part of the messaging. That messaging has ratcheted up over time, and we saw that with the culmination of January 6th.
And would he have needed to believe that the election was really actually stolen, or did he just not believe that the people who voted for Joe Biden were legitimate and should have their way?
I don't think he cared either way. I think, I think that mostly he just doesn't like the left side of things and wanted to see Trump, who gave him a road to authority and authenticity as a clandestine militia leader. He wanted to see him stay in power.
Let me play this video. I think we do have it now. Here is Roger Stone before the election.
Excellent. The violence. The voting. Let's get right to the violence.
Let's get right to it.
Shoot to kill. See an Antifa? Shoot to kill. Come. Done with this.
The Roger Stone saying, F the voting, let's get right to the violence. What was the relationship, as you know it, between Roger Stone and Stewart Rhodes?
Well, we know that there was some sort of communication going on because Oath Keepers were providing security the day before. And it is my understanding that, you know, way back during the campaign, Roger Stone, from my thought process, is probably the one who was reaching out to these militia leaders and trying to open lines of communication. So he probably was one of the major players when it comes to some of these extremist groups and backwater communication to the White House.
Jason Van Tatenhove, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here again. Thank you. Really appreciate you tonight. Still ahead, nationalistic fascism is on the rise, not just here in America, but around the world as well. More on that and how the forces of freedom are fighting back next.
To do this in the face of opposition from Republicans.
Yeah, the Republicans wanted to fund the police, exactly. Republicans are beating Democrats by hefty 20-point margins on crime and immigration. No one's buying their lies anymore. Borders secure, they love the police for the first time in a very long time. And no matter how hard the media tries, this country isn't buying what they're selling. Dana Lash is a nationally syndicated radio host, and she joins me now. I can't believe no one said anything about this murdered law enforcement official in Florida.
I think you raise a really good point, Jesse. And Democrats are for law enforcement until it comes time to actually be for law enforcement, just like they're for sanctuary cities until it actually comes time to fulfill their obligation as a claimed sanctuary city. And it's sad. The things that you were mentioning, I guess that's their messaging going into midterms, is take everything that they were against and then repurpose it and pretend that time starts right now and no one can use this tool called the internet and go back.
Wildfires and what you can do to help them.
But first, residents in Harrisburg on high alert following an alleged threat regarding high school making the rounds on social media. We have reaction from authorities. Those stories and more coming up next on Dakota News Now at 6:30.
This is Dakota News Now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Wright.
I'm Andrea Anderson. We are learning more tonight about an investigation into a perceived threat made against Harrisburg High School.
Authorities ultimately deeming the threat to be not credible, but not for scare for students, parents, and staff. John Gaskins was in Lincoln County today to talk with the sheriff. He has our top story here at 6:30.
Around 8:30 last night, Sheriff Steve Swenson received word of a picture of an assault weapon sent by a male Harrisburg High School student that included messaging with the words, "Wait till tomorrow," and a threat to teach people a lesson. It included racial slurs and was first sent via the social media platform Snapchat.
It spread like wildfire. As you can imagine, thousands of people probably had that message within a half hour.
Swenson is the father of an HHS student and received dozens of texts from fellow parents.
This is scary. My kids freaked out. So stuff to that nature.
The suspect was identified quickly. Around 10 p.m., he was arrested for making a terrorist threat, which is a felony. Shortly after, the district let parents know that it was safe for their kids to go to school Monday, and extra deputies would be on duty.
Those kids are the most important things in our community, and we're going to do whatever we can to protect them.
The assault weapon in the post does not belong to the suspect. The image came from the internet. Swenson says this sort of threat happens about once a year, and it's typically kids acting irresponsibly.
There's nothing funny about it. You really terrorized 1,600 students that go to that high school, and I don't think that for most of them that's not their intention.
And they don't understand the magnitude or consequences.
Social media can be your worst enemy if you use it in the wrong way.
Sheriff Swenson said prevention of scares like these always come back to parents telling their kids that in no way is conversation about guns or threats ever a laughing matter. In Harrisburg, John Gaskins, Dakota News Now.
The Harrisburg School District sending an email to parents today saying in part that it is limited in the information it could give, but that the district has been working with law enforcement and the individual will not be in school for the foreseeable future.
Turning things over now to a check of the forecast, and a pretty calm and mild day out there, but when it comes to the clouds, it's kind of hit or miss. Who has them, Tyler?
That's very true, Andrea. You know, and a really nice sunset looking to take shape in the Sioux Falls area after we've had a lot of cloud cover throughout the day. They are finally starting to clear out across the region. Here's what it looks like this evening, and we've had a lot of sunshine throughout the day in places like Pierre, but even in Aberdeen, we've had a lot of clouds, and they're now starting to thin out. And again, a nice view in Sioux Falls. Mitchell, you have some extra clouds for now, but cloud-free essentially in Marshall, Minnesota. First alert live Doppler radar, really just over the last couple of hours, those clouds have really started to clear out. Northwestern Iowa still quite a bit of cloud cover, but they'll be thinning out later on tonight. Temperatures are still in the low 80s in western South Dakota, but for those of us where we've had cloud cover throughout the day, we're only in the mid to upper 60s. Further west and kind of in between, we're in the low to mid 70s. The next
and there's my.
You just joked that you were the best Batman.
With the 7,000.
So I allowed who haven't delivered safety. What you said is most important. Should Democrats worry that black voters are going to go shopping for another candidate?
I think black voters in Georgia and elsewhere are going to be challenged for Democrats to go to them and say vote again without having delivered on the Voting Rights Act or the George Floyd Act. That may be in other parts of the country. But here's the deal. The Democrats have delivered. Biden certainly has some legislative wins to sell. You've got to sell that. But there are three things to watch in this next race, and I know we got 30 seconds, and that is whether white female voters are going to come out against or for, rather, abortion, whether black voters are going to keep their promise and come out in large numbers with the Democrats, and then second or thirdly, is Donald Trump going to really take control over the RNC and voters generally to define what America looks like going forward? Watch those three things and we'll see.
You know, Scott, oddly enough, you and George Will have more points of agreement than I would have guessed when this show started. Thank you.
I love George Will.
We all do. We all do. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Good seeing you.
All right, and this is exactly the issues we are talking about. Can Democrats make the 2022 midterms about Donald Trump or not? And how can Democrats try to take out Donald Trump for 2024? So far, they have not succeeded. Before that, debate night in America, the Texas governor's debate this Friday. Some of the very same issues that we've been talking about for 2024 on the ballot in 2022. This Friday, coverage begins at 7/6 Central from Texas. And we will be on the border Thursday before the governor's debate, talking about the issues in Texas that are a microcosm of so much that's going on around the country.
Isn't it time you realized the
líderes en su campo, en su disciplina. Entonces yo serle útil también y poder explicarle, mira, esto es lo que está pasando en el Congreso.
We're managing. Taking a stand for freedom and modernity. Stay with us.
We really had our hands full.
People have to remember, you know, this is a 15-year-old girl.
In New Orleans, Callaway with that clutch play.
Oh, yeah, we got him, you know, with the speed release off the line. Up. Nice body control within three defenders. Hold on, there you go. Yes, sir. Two defenders.
You can
One
pull
hand.
that off easy, right? You can pull that off easy.
Easy money.
Up to the height, playing 61 games, averaging.
Living smooth.
For me. And she probably spends
trauma. And I know there's really not much you can say about it right now in the midst of all that. Is there anything that you do want to share about what happened?
At this time, I do not. I don't know what I can or can't say without being officially debriefed.
Yeah, no, I understand. And Joy, it's got to be so hard not talking to Andy for more than 100 days. What is it like now as you try to talk again and you're sort of re-engaging someone you missed every day, and yet obviously this unbelievable thing happened?
We're kind of taking it at our own pace and kind of slow, but it's actually, I'm glad that he's still him, and we didn't lose him there. He's still Andy, and even though it's still kind of hard and we're still sorting through things, still readjusting. It might have a little bit of normalcy.
Yeah, no, and it's I don't even want to use the word normal because obviously, Andy, nothing that you went through was normal, but of course it's going to take time. I mean, Andy, did you have any idea that Joy was on national television pleading for your release? That, you know, of everything that she was doing to try to make sure everyone knew about you and how she was trying to bring you home?
To an extent, I did know Alex was a representative for the Americans that were there. And he, when we were able to meet up again, he more or less told me what was happening with the world, more specifically on the news front with Joy and Bunny telling about us. So we knew like small information bits about it.
And Joy, you said that Andy had a wish that you found out after his, you knew he was coming home, that he had a wish for for big spaghetti dinner with meat sauce. And a long list of fast food. Did you get to have that spaghetti dinner?
Yes. We ended up having it last night. Last night, yes. For the fast food, like McDonald's, the airport was there, so we just ended up getting McDonald's.
That's all right. I think that was most important thing was just being able to spend time together. Well, thank you both so much. I'll look forward to talking to you again, and we're just really so, as I say, Joy to you. So joyful that you have had this wonderful reunion. Thank you both. All right. And next, for the first time, we hear from a migrant who was on the inside of the operation to fly migrants to Martha's Vineyard, how he became a key player in Ron DeSantis's play. Plus Hurricane Ian. Forecasters are calling it the storm of a lifetime. Winds now close to 100 miles an hour. The latest on the track as it churns towards Florida.
When high quality at 9.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen.
I'm Andrea Anderson.
9 p.m. on Fox Sioux Falls.
Dakota News Now is sponsored by Toyota.
Having trouble finding employees? Looking for ways to attract top talent? Say goodbye to these workforce woes and attend the Win in Workforce Summit this October in Sioux Falls. This day-long conference will give you the tools you need to attract the right employees for your organization. Hear from former NFL running back Justin Forsett, local business leaders, and more. Plus, earn SHRM personal development credits for attending. Register today at wininworkforce.com.
Do you have a pest problem? Got bats, ants, termites? Family owned and operated, Olson's Pest Technicians have had over 50 years experience taking care of pest problems in places across South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. Utilizing brilliant methods such as Centricon bait stations for termites and Vicane treatment for bed bugs. There's no pest too tough for Olson's Pest Technicians. If you have pest problems, call 800-KILL-BUGS.
Come to Harvard, it's a great experience. You're gonna enjoy the atmosphere and care about other people and what they strive.
Trump's favorability ratings are up 90%, up 6% from July. Unfavorables among Republicans down to 10% from 15% in July. That is the shortest I could write the lead to this segment, thanks to a new book by Mike Allen and friends, Smart Brevity, The Power of Saying More with Less. Mike is here, co-founder of Axios Politico, longtime reporter at the Washington Post and New York Times. Right now, if this was your newsletter, Mike, the segment would be over.
Well, Leland, thank you for the smart brevity, trustworthy, crisp, efficient communication. You're going to break through and you're going to be heard amid the fog of words.
So here's the deal. Democrats are not breaking through with Republicans. Whatever they try to do to take Donald Trump down, it ain't working. So what will they do to break through?
Yeah. So with Donald Trump in particular, they're going to have to play for time. There, our reporting shows that the federal investigation into the documents seized at Mar-a-Lago is in an early stage. So whatever is going to happen there is going to take a while. Looking ahead just to November, closing fast, Democrats are counting on abortion to be the issue that holds down the red wave. For a while, we thought it was going to be a red tsunami. Now it's back to looking more like a red wave. But, Leland, I'm going to give your viewers one stat, and that is from the Washington Post ABC News poll this weekend. in that poll, Republicans have a 22-point advantage on the public trusting them on crime. So Republicans ahead in trust on economy, ahead on trust on inflation. Democrats have abortion. And the question is, will people vote on that? I can tell you behind the scenes, Republican strategists saying they are banking on the fact that even though voters say they vastly disapprove of the Supreme Court decision, they won't end up voting on that.
How much of what you all learned in creating Axios would sort of change the way news is digested, at least by a certain group of people? How much of that is, to borrow Andrew Breitbart's concept that politics flows downstream of culture? How much of that is news has to flow downstream of attention span?
No, that's such a great point, Leland. And by the way, speaking of that, at the same event where Liz Cheney made that quote that you just used the bite from, the Texas Tribune Festival, the California Governor Newsom said that Democrats were on the defensive, Republicans were controlling the national narrative. And it's hard right now. What you said about attention span. So, Leland, this is something that's been a real change since you and I have been in the business. Some of the greatest journalism in the world, you go to those websites, and the average story from the average reader gets 20 seconds. We constantly share content that we haven't actually read. And so if you have an important idea, how do you break through? That's what my co-authors, Jim Vandehei, Roy Schwartz, and I look at in this new book, Smart Brevity. And the idea is to help you, show you how to sharpen your idea, state it crisply and clearly so that it will break through. And a quick hack for your viewers, Leland, is that if you think about your own consumption, if you're watching a TV segment, listening to a podcast, listening to a sermon, whatever piece of content you're consuming, at best you're going to remember one thing. And so what we teach in the book, Smart Brevity, is whether you're writing a memo, whether you're giving a bachelor toast, whether you are writing an update to your boss, one thing is going to get across. And so don't give people 8 things. Don't drown them in words. Figure out the one thing you want to say it clearly, and then just stop.
If we bring this back to politics, though, in the launch of Axios coincided with the inauguration of Donald Trump. Did Donald Trump figure that out? Was he the original smart brevity politician? Build the wall, for example?
No, that's a good example, and one way that you and your viewers can surf off that. And in Smart Brevity, we give examples for teachers, examples for ministers, examples for an intern, a first-day employee, someone who wants to be the boss, somebody who is a mogul. And Leland, a great example of boiling something down and having forethought. So there's a minister in Alexandria, Virginia, David Glade, and he was telling a story about some advice he gave his kids. And the advice was 5 words: do the next right thing. And what's illuminating about that, Leland, is think about how much thought went in on the front end. Think of all the books and authors that he could have quoted, but he did the work on the front end. He boiled it down, and he said something so memorable, do the next right thing, that here we are talking about it years later. And that's the key for your viewers, your listeners, and that is think about the audience that you're trying to reach, audience first. What's going to stick with them? What are they going to remember? You do the work. Don't make them hunt through your words. Say one thing. That's how you break through. That's how you be heard.
Advice also for television anchors that we could all learn from as well. You were nice not to add that. I will add it for myself. But the point of audience first says an awful lot, that we're here for them, not them for us. Mike, it's good to see you. The book is Smart Brevity. Congratulations. As I said a couple of days ago, my dog Dutch loved his copy. Thank you. Good to see you.
Awesome
We'll talk soon. Flag
Thank
football.
You. See you on smartbrevity.com.
Smartbrevity.com. There you go. Flag football comes to the NFL when you get to see your favorite players in a very different game coming up.
News Nation live with Marnie Hughes. blamed everyone but himself for the shooting, but the FBI report submitted last month included an analysis of the weapon and concluded that the pistol, quoting here, functioned normally when tested in the laboratory. The report also stated that in order for the gun to be fired, the trigger needed to be pulled. Baldwin said this to ABC News last December. Watch.
It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them. Never. That was the training that I had. You don't point a gun at me and pull the trigger at them.
We should also note Alec Baldwin has also listed his 10-acre compound in the Hamptons for $29 million. It's unclear if selling the property is an effort to get ready for what could be a long legal fight, but Baldwin could be facing just that. Jesse.
I see those as signs as well. Thank you so much, Trace.
You bet.
In here.
And she was able to convince them to do this. Now what
they trusted her.
And they trusted her. And what we hear from, we hear a lot from on both sides is that she was either this Good Samaritan who really cared about people on the streets and wanted to get them to a better place, or that she was a mastermind just taking advantage of people and probably maybe working in connection with some political operative, maybe DeSantis. Yeah. But we still have a lot to learn about this mystery woman.
Certainly a lot to learn, although interesting is in that one text, that she said, the state will take care of you. I mean, knew certain things that obviously pretty sophisticated and didn't want to speak to reporters. Would lead you to think political, but obviously still so many questions. Right. All right, well, thank you so much, Maria, for that report. And next, Hurricane Ian, now a Category 2, and it's gonna, they say, get stronger. The winds are going to pick up as it's moving through this very hot water. Going to be a catastrophic storm. Officials telling people in parts of Florida to leave now. We have the latest on the track next, plus the massive price tag for Biden's plan to relieve student debt.
For 60s tomorrow and Wednesday, the wind ramping up Wednesday and Thursday. Last day of September is on Friday. We'll be in the upper 70s, and then some rain looks to make its way back in on Sunday. In Aberdeen, for you, you'll be in the upper 60s tomorrow, then start to slowly warm up into the upper 70s by Thursday and Friday. A little cooler for the weekend, and then you have a chance to see some rain on Sunday. Unfortunately, the rain chances over the next 10 days, not very good, and the rain that we do see not adding up to very much. In Pierre, you'll be warming up to the mid-80s Thursday, but then cooling down to the upper 60s by the end of the weekend. Stick around. Dakota News Now will continue right after the break.
Only one station offers over 6.
They don't have a lot of mass, so as far as the deflecting the asteroid part goes, they don't really matter very much. It's the main body of the spacecraft that we worry about. DART has one instrument on it. It's called the Draco camera. And this camera is also built and developed at APL, and it has heritage from the camera that flew on the New Horizons mission that captured the spectacular images of Pluto that I think we all remember from a number of years ago. So using that sort of design, it was modified in order to go onto the DART spacecraft. And that payload is really important because it will give us images of what this asteroid looks like, Dimorphos, which we've never seen before. From Earth, you can't separate Didymos from Dimorphos, so we really don't know what this asteroid looks like. But really importantly, the Draco images are used to do the autonomous navigation at the end of the mission so that we'll ensure that we hit Dimorphos, which is a challenge in itself.
Is the autonomous navigation a new technology? Is this pushing science?
Yeah, the autonomous navigation, SmartNav, is what we call that system on board DART, is one of the challenges and one of the new technologies for this mission. We're targeting an asteroid that's 140 meters in diameter. This will be the smallest object that NASA has sent a spacecraft to. To complicate matters, it's going around Didymos, which is 780 meters in diameter. And since these objects are so close together and you're coming in so fast, 14,000 miles per hour, the Draco images will not be able to distinguish these two objects from each other until the last hour of the mission. Before that, they just looked like a single point of light. And so you can see clearly that you need to have your spacecraft smart enough to use those images, fire its thrusters, target onto Dimorphos, and hit Dimorphos as nearly head-on as possible. And that's where the SmartNav technology developed at APL comes in. It's a really good new technology for planetary defense for targeting these small objects. But also one of the main challenges, because like I was saying, we don't know what Dimorphos looks like. We don't know its shape. From other asteroids we've been to, we know they have a whole variety of shapes. And so there's been extensive testing that's gone on in order to meet this challenge. And we're looking forward to the demonstration.
Well, give me a little bit of a sense of all those years of development and the teams involved with, once the idea was that we are going to try and affect the trajectory of this asteroid, what kind of craft would be capable of doing that? How did that process evolve?
Like everything, it's hard to talk about spacecraft development because there's lots of paths that don't work out. All ideas are on the table at the early stages of there. I think first and foremost, DART is a very focused mission, and that was always very important into this whole discussion. A lot of times when you get the opportunity to fly in space, you want to be able to do all sorts of things because there's so much that we could do and so much that still remains to be done. But DART really has one purpose, and that is to hit Dimorphos and deflect it how it goes around Didymos. And so really the spacecraft is very slimmed down. It uses as much heritage technology as possible so that you can concentrate on those new challenges like the smart navigation in order to autonomously target onto that asteroid during the last hours of the mission. So in a lot of ways it was meant to be robust and to be focused. And this is what you would want if you were potentially having to deflect an asteroid in the future. You want something that is as simple as possible in order to enable the mission to succeed.
And how fast will
serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or
don't jiggle, it folds.
Migrate forward to the state, and we're seeing Brett Favre get millions and millions of dollars, and Jackson seemingly get nothing.
Our mayors, as far back as I can remember, have asked state leaders for assistance in repairing our aging infrastructure. They have not received it, not received a large enough amount to offer the repairs that we needed. And so here we are, our system failed. And we are still going to experience this in the winter months if it is not completely repaired. All they have done is done some patchwork, okay? The state has not fixed it yet. So that is why we are here today. That's why we are demanding that our water systems be fixed, that our pipes be fixed, that our children are no longer exposed to lead and copper and bad things in their water, because we deserve clean water.
Bishop Barber, I remember when you launched Moral Mondays in North Carolina, and this was the denial of health care to the residents there. You were relaunching that in Jackson, Mississippi, in Mississippi. Your thoughts on this decision-making about where to spend money on sports facilities that Brett Favre and his daughter benefit from, not on Jackson?
Well, you know, it's been hard for me not to say what Nina Simone said about Mississippi. But the bottom line is, you see all of this thievery that's allegedly happened between the government and Favre, and yet there's people here, and not only are they stealing money allegedly, they're stealing poor folks' money, the money that comes from poor people. We look at what's going on with this family. We look at the fact that the mayor has had a plan. Jackson has had a plan. They've lied on this city. We look at the fact that the city voted to tax itself to fix it, and then the state government and the governor blocked them from using their own money to fix the problem. What you have here is a group of folk who are intent. They want privatization. They want to own this city. They want to own the airport. Seemingly, they want to steal the money. They don't want poor people to have anything. But what's happening is poor and low-wealth people of every race, creed, and color are standing up because this water is hurting black people and women and men and the disabled and Latinos and white people. And this Moral Monday is the first. When we started in North Carolina, it was 17 people. They have 10 times, 20 times more people than that here. And this is just the first. What we're not going to do, be silent. What they're not going to do is allow them to do patchwork and then get it out of the media and continue to do the same old, same old. People are tired of having to wash their babies in poison water and don't know what's in it. They're tired of it. And it happens year after year because the state and the governor has been more interested in blocking fixing what needs to be fixed than helping to fix what needs to be fixed. But the state the federal government, the Corps of Engineers, all of them could get in here and do this. My sister Mallory just said it. If this was anywhere else, if this was in an affluent community or an affluent city, this would not be happening. This would not be happening. It's happening here because of that, but people are standing up and deciding that they're not going to be silent or quiet anymore on these matters. And they've been organizing for years about this. This is not just something just starting. These people have been organizing for years, George. Yes. What was the question?
No, indeed. I was just going to ask Ms. Flood if you could just describe for us what it is like to live in a city, because we saw this with Flint, a city, you know, without water, a city where you don't have access to water that comes out of your tap.
It's frustrating. It's overwhelming as a parent. When the water is gone, schools are closed. You know, your kids are at home. They're learning at home. I know this whole country dealt with that during the pandemic, but this has happened before the pandemic. Our children were at home for long stretches of time because the water lines broke. Our water system is broken. It is broken. And so this is, you know, boiling water after you've gotten home from work, having just to wash the dishes, getting bottled water to brush teeth, to wash babies' faces because you don't want them to accidentally ingest the water. Sure. This is a time-consuming, a frustrating, money, costly, you name it, it runs the list of things that are inconvenient as well as unfair. I mean, the list goes on. It's immoral, it's sinful, it's not okay, and it's not right.
And George, one thing before you go, what is also the issue? The same people here, that same governor, they're blocking living wages. 50% of Mississippians make less than living wage. They block health care in this state. So during a pandemic, people died because they didn't have health care. And they're also poisoning the water. That's why people are coming together, because they're tired of it and it must change.
Indeed. Bishop William Barber, Brooke Flood, thank you both very much. Much appreciated. That is tonight's Readout. All In with Chris Hayes starts now.
Tonight on All In.
There was much more coordination than the American public can even imagine when it came to January 6th.
Tonight, my exclusive interview with former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman on claims in his new book of Trump world connections to January 6 extremists and his response to committee pushback on his aha moment.
You get a real aha moment when you see that the White House switchboard had connected to a rioter's phone while it's happening. That's a pretty big aha moment.
Then why a far-right victory in Italy is sending shockwaves throughout.
Basic requirements like free speech and representative government. A few years ago, the Prime Minister of Italy at the time, Paolo Gentiloni, bragged to the World Economic Forum about his plans to, quote, bring more social justice to the country, by which he meant importing many more thousands.
Disaster.
Come on, press that button.
NewsNation Prime starts right now.
Live from NewsNation headquarters, this is NewsNation Prime.
And thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with Hurricane Ian gaining strength by the hour. The massive storm system spinning towards the Florida coast right now, packing high winds, torrential rains, a powerful storm surge. Residents in Florida bracing for the worst, some waiting hours for free sandbags, stockpiling emergency supplies now. Breaking with just within the hour, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been told to evacuate Tampa and instead practice in Miami ahead of the storm. And in a minute, I will be speaking with Alan Johnson, the mayor of St. Pete Beach, a community among the first to evacuate before the storm hits. But first, correspondent Xavier Walton joining us live from Tampa with the very latest. Xavier?
Natasha, good evening. Ian, now a Category 2 hurricane, and it's only getting stronger from here. But right now, we are at a sandbag site here in Tampa. We actually just spoke to a gentleman. This place closed just a few minutes ago. The gentleman was waiting in line for hours, only to find out it closed and never got his sandbags. There's still people waiting in line now. Meantime, people here bracing for windows for Ian.
The force from Hurricane Ian inching closer to the southeast after crossing over the Cayman Islands. Florida is tracking its path. The storm expected to reach Cat 4 status in the coming days before making landfall.
Get your bags, get your water, get everything. Yeah, they should be used to this by now. We have one every year.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declaring a state of emergency and readying more than 25,000 National Guardsmen. Some local leaders not waiting any longer to tell their residents to leave.
We have put in evacuation notices mandatory in Zone A.
So this is one of 3 sandbag sites set up by the mayor. You just heard from her there. Take a look at this long line of cars. The woman I spoke to said she waited more than 3 hours just to get right here to get her bags filled with sand. So far, more than 40,000 and counting.
The category and where it's aiming towards is kind of scary and alarming.
Hardware stores ahead of the hurricane continue to be busy, and bottled water continues to be a hot commodity. Florida Emergency Management anticipating widespread power outages that could last for days. As for Ian,
48 hours of throwing this water well into every inlet, every canal, every channel, and not just right on the coastline. We're talking a mile or so in. Developers off of the last several decades have grabbed every sand dune, every orange grove, and have put high-value real estate here. So this is a very vulnerable spot. Now, even if you look at some of these areas, of course, getting up to over 9-10 feet, that's staggering. There are churches, hospitals. MacDill Air Force Base will probably flood. A runway at the airport, Tampa International. But even down to Port Charles, you get into the Port Charlotte, you get into Charlotte Harbor. This is the Peace River. That is several miles inland. We're looking at 9-10 feet, and homes line every one of these waterways. So it's significant, to say the least.
Yeah, 10 feet of water right on top of where people live, which
Correct.
could be lethal. Tom Sater, thank you so much for that. And we're going to watch the storm throughout the hour and bring you a live report from Cuba that Tom just mentioned a bit later. Now, we have multiple new developments with less than 2 days to go until Wednesday's House January 6th committee hearing. There are the text messages obtained by CNN connecting then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows with a key player in the scheme to seize voting machines. There's also new footage of the former president's longtime ally Roger Stone a day before the 2020 election saying, quote, "F the voting, let's get right to the violence." CNN's Sarah Murray has more on both stories and joins us now. So, Sarah, let's start with this documentary footage of Roger Stone. What can you tell us about that?
Well, look, John, as you said, this was a day before the 2020 election. Roger Stone is, of course, a longtime key ally of the former president. He pretty much makes it clear in this footage, shot by documentary filmmakers, that he doesn't feel a need to wait until the votes are tallied. Here's a look at what he said in this footage.
One. The violence. The voting. Let's get right to the violence.
Let's get right to it.
Shoot to kill. See an Antifa? Shoot to kill. Come. Done with this bullshit.
So this is one of the clips that was obtained by CNN, but of course it was also shared with the January 6th committee. We know that they have been looking into Roger Stone's alleged ties to domestic extremist groups. We may see some of this coming through in their Wednesday hearing. They've also been looking at efforts that Roger Stone made to try to keep Donald Trump in the White House. We also got a lengthy statement from Roger Stone, so bear with me for this. That I challenge the accuracy and the authenticity of these videos and believe they have been manipulated and selectively edited. I also point out that the filmmakers do not have the legal right to use them. How ironic that Kim Kardashian and I are both subjected to computer manipulated videos on the same day. I'll let our viewers go down that rabbit hole on their own. He continues to say, the excerpts you provided below prove nothing. Certainly they do not prove I had anything to do with the events of January 6th. That being said, it clearly shows I advocated for lawful congressional and judicial options. So that is Roger Stone's take on these videos. But again, as I said, there are this clip and others that the January 6th committee has obtained.
So there's that, Sarah. Then there are these text messages between then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and this pro-Trump operative behind plans to seize machines. What's going on there?
That's right. This is a guy, Phil Waldron. He's a retired Army colonel, but perhaps more importantly, he's been this big promoter of election conspiracies. And he, has promoted this effort to try to seize voting machines. The goal, of course, was to try to find evidence of these baseless claims of voter fraud that have been peddled by the Trump team. So these texts obtained by CNN are from December 2020, and they really show that Waldron is keeping Meadows, then the White House Chief of Staff, in the loop about his efforts to try to access these voting machines. So at one point, you know, he is texting Mark Meadows to essentially lament the fact that, you know, an Arizona lawsuit they tried to bring had been dismissed by a judge. This was a lawsuit where they were trying to force state officials to hand over the voting equipment again so that they could go through this voting equipment and, you know, find some kind of evidence to back up these allegations of voter fraud they were making. And Meadows responds and he says, pathetic. And that's what you can see in these text messages, sort of Meadows sharing in this frustration that Phil Waldron is laying forth about his inability to try to get to these voting machines, John.
All right, Sarah Murray, thank you for your reporting on multiple fronts. Some perspective now on the Meadows story from someone who once held his job. Leon Panetta served as White House Chief of Staff during the Clinton administration, followed by Defense Secretary and CIA Director in the Obama White House. Secretary Panetta, very nice to see you. As someone who had this job, what goes through your head when you see that Mark Meadows was communicating, at a minimum, communicating, perhaps indulging a conspiracy theorist about attempts to gain access to voting systems?
Well, it just adds to the evidence that Mark Meadows was obviously trying to find ways to implement President Trump's desire to be able to set aside the election results and have him be able to be elected. So what you're picking up here are all of the text messages that Mark Meadows was involved with all kinds of shady characters. And obviously, Phil Waldron is one of those who is basically involved in theories related to election machines that were out there. You know, it just shows that the level of desperation, I think, to try to see if they could find any way to overturn the election.
You know, Mr. Secretary, at the beginning,
no, it's great. Real rave. 5 stars. Yeah.
So the issue is that you got to look at the data. They might look at thousands of leads, but these are not counterterrorism analysts. And what I'm saying, though, is that the investigation's going great. The committee has done well, but we're in a new war. We're in a forever war and an information war. And you have to look at these tiny pieces of data to really put together the command and control architecture that these individuals use. And the fact is, I think some of this dialogue that they're having, which some of it's, you know, a little bit sad. You know, I'm not a sociopath. You know, sometimes I get my feelings hurt. You know, they're still using our same data teams, the ones I built, the contracts, the millions of lines of data, the call detail records, the text messages. That's all of our team. That's me. So, I find it interesting that they would say that.
Well, here's the other thing that I got from Schiff's statement there, right, is that they understand they have a target painted on their back, right? And any slip up, any error is going to be the source of massive blowback and discrediting. And you can see that they have been extremely careful, and I would say small c conservative, in what they presented. They made deliberations. Your book is a channel outside of those deliberations about what gets made public.
Well, that's because the data is owned by the Americans. It's owned by Americans. It's not owned by me. It's not owned by the committee. This is public trust. I was a former congressman. I was a former CEO. I've done this for 20 years. I've probably forgotten more about data analytics than everybody on the committee, right? But that's why they picked me. You know, you talk about, you know, limited knowledge. Well, if limited knowledge is 20 years in the counterterrorism field, that's sort of something.
Let's talk about this one phone call, right? So, sure. So we know, I mean, I don't think this has been disputed. I think this is established, right? It's a fact, right? There was a phone call from the White House switchboard.
It's a landline that actually routes to the switchboard. It's a default number that you can actually set through your call manager. So just like desk phones here, you call off your desk phone, it goes to a default number, and it goes to an individual.
And that individual was a rider at the Capitol. Correct. And it happens around 4:30, I think, is that right? Like
1634 local.
Yeah. I guess what do you make of that, right? So, yes, it is an aha moment when you hear it, right? The question is like, well, what does it add up to?
Right. What it adds up to is how in the world, in any way, would you have somebody on a White House desk calling a rioter on January 6th? Let's go through it. Were they ordering pizza? Dialed the wrong number? Probably not, right? Or how about, was it a girlfriend?
Right, or an associate or someone they knew that was in town from a low-level staff, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so we have an associate, whoever on that desk phone, is calling a rioter who's been convicted, who's a DOJ charged defendant. Here's the only thing. By the way, the committee is pursuing this. They wanted to see the White House numbers. They couldn't get them. There's hundreds of them. So there's so much more here. So to say that
Well, but what's the so much more, right? To that, here's my understanding of what I've seen following this very closely, right?
Right.
You've got the White House is whipping this up, right? Donald Trump is whipping this up.
Right.
He's got this sort of people that are his kind of off-books team, right? The Bannon and the Roger Stone. And, and then he's got people floating around. Meadows sort of the center of it. And then this sort of wide array of characters, right, who are showing up. The question always is, what's the level of coordination? And then more deeply, how much coordination do you need when the guy with the biggest megaphone in the world is telling people, like, go down to the Capitol?
Well, you need a little bit of coordination if you're talking about multiple groups that have multiple objectives. And, you know, in the military, you know, it's really commander's intent. And the commander's intent was, we want to keep President Trump in power. That's what he told us to do. All of these groups, though, they had sort of different organizations, and they had to talk to each other. And if you look at, if you look at Kelly Sorrell, if you look at Rhodes and Tarrio and those individuals that were, in the basement.
Stuart Rhodes of the Oath Keepers, Enrique Tarrio,
I should probably,
who's of the Proud Boys. It's all right.
Sorry about that, Chris. You know, I know this pretty well. When you see that all three of those have been charged with conspiracy or seditious conspiracy, and you see that there's actually phone links between these individuals, and then you have links to Roger Stone that are specific, that will come out eventually, right? That there's actually phone calls happening between these individuals. So that's the kind of thing. It's like, okay, we know that Roger Stone, we saw a signal chat, on the newspaper, the Washington Post. They reported great reporting on that. We see all these different things, but by the way, we have digital confirmation that these individuals were in contact, and that is massive.
Yeah, let me talk about Stone.
Sure.
This is a book capture. I mean, it always seemed to me, again, without any access to any data, that Stone was sort of in the middle of a Venn diagram, right? I mean, we've got him. We know that he's in the Willard Hotel, in the hotel, right, the day of, in the sort of war room. We know he's around Eastman. We know he has Proud Boys or Oath Keeper bodyguards, right? So all this stuff is we've seen.
Right.
You write in the book that along with the top members of the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, his number was connected to higher-level Trump associates, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, Bernie Kerik, former NYPD commissioner, close ally Rudy Giuliani, Arthur Schwartz, who's a Manhattan political consultant, worked closely with Donald Trump Jr. How central do you think Stone's role is?
I think since 2016. I mean, he's the Stop the Steal sort of founder there. So when you think about somebody and you see what he said, who he's been with, who he's hired, who he's called, who he's contacted, Roger Stone is one of the most important factors of what happened on January 6th. It's not just in what he has said himself, but it's really in the link connections, in the data, and in the people that work for him. So if you look at Kristen Davis, right? Kristen Davis maybe didn't practice as good operational security as Roger Stone. Maybe Kristen Davis is
a longtime associate of Roger Stone.
Longtime association, right, with Roger Stone. And maybe she also liked to hang around with Mike Flynn. And, maybe she was looser with her phones or her text messages. So, that's why I keep going back. The committee's on the right track here. They've done a fantastic job. But the American public needs to know why they're doing such a great job is because the data is backing up their play here.
How would you, in the year 2022, as we sit here, describe yourself politically, ideologically?
Unaffiliated. There's no, I mean, even looking at, even what happened in the last couple of days, it's funny is that I would do the same, if you're in a political tribe, you have to sort of rally the troops around you, right? Or if you feel like you don't know what's coming or you're uncertain of what's happening. So I have a feeling when the book releases tomorrow as an unaffiliated individual, I think people are going to calm down a little bit. Because when you look at it, the committee has talked about a lot of this stuff, but I wanted to explain to individuals, people that weren't in the D.C. Beltway, people who maybe come to my distillery, they could read a 280-page book that could break it down like this is why it happened and this is why it's true and the committee's correct.
Well, that's what I want to...
What's happening in this country, which is we're losing this country, are the ones who are being attacked. And I'm on the campaign trail. We're working 6 to 10 events a day. We're working really hard. And I had somebody reach out to me the other day and say, Carrie, you are fearless. You are so fearless. You're not afraid of anything. And I stopped him and I said, actually, I have great fear. I'm not afraid of the fake news. I'm not afraid of the globalists. I'm not afraid of anything that I'm facing on the campaign trail. I'm not afraid of the cartels. What I am scared to death of is what happens if we don't step in right at this moment and do something. I'm afraid of the world that our children will live in. That's what scares me to death.
So you spent your career working in news, so you know how totally fraudulent it is. It's a burden some of us bear who work in this business. Maybe that's why you're not afraid.
Thank God for you. Thank God for you.
Because you know it's fake.
Truly.
Carrie Lake, Godspeed. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
So we went out to Las Vegas last week to meet with a really interesting person. If you follow sports, you've heard of him. He runs into you.
Before I lost the weight, I definitely wasn't feeling. You got to kind of shut down your emotion and just do.
It came off the bone, so Tyler gets the shot at left tackle. He played tackle in college, 24th overall pick.
Yeah, the thing he told me is that Kellen Moore gets those plays in quickly. As soon as time to get the play called, get up there and survey the defense. Nothing worse than a coordinator not.
Kitchen, sort.
I will clear her name.
New Thursday on CBS.
The prosecution is playing very dirty.
Who was that?